Hey there, welcome to TH3 Tutorials. Today we're going to be learning about variables and a little bit about the different types of functions. Last time we learned about the ready and process function, and today I want to expand that just a bit and add the button function to that. So if you remember, right, so the I am ready is going to call right when the function is ready. The process function is going to call its function every process, so 60 times a second. And the new one is going to be a button function. So like if we go in here, go to add child, type in button, right? Just a regular button's fine. Grab the button, it's going to pop up in the corner over there. Button one. And so we have this guy, right? Or we have our button. So how do we get the button to basically like call a block of code, right? Is it going to call the ready? Is it going to call the process, right? So like how do we hook that up? So if we go over here and click on the button and go to node and then hit press, find whatever script you want it to fire at. It can fire at any of them, and it can fire at multiple of them, but just trying to figure it out. And I'm grabbing the pressed one right now, but you can do there's a lot of them you can choose to do, but the button's very simple. So we'll grab that, and it's going to put a new line of code in for us. We're going to use that for some functionality here in a second. So we have this label that moves when we start, if you guys remember that. So like why do we need variables, right? So what if I want that label? What if I want that label to go like twice as fast? Well, I'll just change the 1 to a 2. It's going to be moving at, 2 units per frame, and it'll, I can just keep changing this number, right? Well, yeah, and for this instance, if we were just worried about that label, it's actually not a bad way to handle it. But what if I I wanted this button right here to like double the speed, right? So what do I do there? So how do I talk to this guy in here? Do I like, do I just go in here and say, oops, what about that, right? Why isn't that working? It's because, this isn't a process function. Unless we want to hit there and, click that button 60 times every second. And you could do it a little bit higher here if it helps people see the button like actually do stuff, right? See it jumping around. So that's not going to work. So like we want to press this button, and whatever's going on in this process function, we want it to be happening twice as fast. So like what do we do here, right? So we're going to do is we'll call it a speed multiplier, right? But what do we do? Like, where do we put it? So up here at the top, we're going to declare our first variable ever, right? Var speed multiplier. And I usually have my variable name shorter, but this is, let's keep it long for everybody. And we'll say 2. Or actually, we'll do 1 until we hit the button, right? And then, let's go in here. And we'll say, yeah, whatever we enter here is going to be times the speed multiplier. And then when we hit this button, speed multiplier is equal to 2. So we're going to press the button. It's going to set the speed multiplier to 2. It's going to be at 1 at the start. And this process function will automatically kind of like start initiating, because it's just like, it's kind of like if it's already running and you just throw a wrench in the gears, right? Like it's doing its thing and you're just like changing it as it's going. So let's try it out. So if I hit this button, 2 is not really that noticeable, surprisingly. So let's, speed multiplier of 6. How's that? And then we hit it. Look at it. So as soon as we hit the button, it bumps it up. So that's one of the reasons that you have to have a variable. But some things that you want to kind of go ahead and get in the habit of is basically anytime you have like a hard coded number, you're probably going to want to get rid of that at some point. Like, let's say we have another label, right? And it needs speed. Well, you're gonna have to come down here and, let's say you had like tons of lines of code, and like you have to come down here and find it. Um, or you could just come up here and have a speed variable, right? Speed equals 1. And then rather than having the 1 here, you could say position.x, plus equals speed times the speed multiplier. And this is going to work exactly the same as we just seen. All right, it's pretty simple. And we kind of got the basics of variables, right? Well, there is a little bit more to variables than that. So what I want to do here, let's add another button. What if we wanted to have the label show us its speed as it's moving rather than the I am ready, right? So one thing we're going to run into is data types, which is something that's very important. So when we press this button, let's go ahead and grab the speed times speed multiplier. And also, when we're doing this, we can make a variable inside of a function, and that variable won't leave the function. It kind of just helps us sort out the code. For like instance here, I'm going to go ahead and say var total speed is equal to that, right? And we can do that here. We're not trying to do too many like calculations in the same line. It's very readable, right? Position.x plus equals the total speed we have that we already figured out. And same here. And the reason why we're doing it here again, right? Because we're doing it here. Once we get inside of function, the variables and stuff aren't going to leave that function. So up here at the top, so we're gonna come into this page, right? And it's just like, while you're here, these are like the rules. Like, when in Rome, these are, do as the Romans do, and these are the variables we're going to do. But that happens again once we get into a function. So like, if you ask this page what total speed is, it doesn't know until we either get into this function, the process function, or the button to press, or wherever you decide to call it. And yeah, technically you could just set it at the top if you wanted to, but that's a little bit more than what we're trying to get into right now. All right, so now we're trying to set the text to be what the total speed is, right? So if you remember how we changed text up here in the, well, I guess I got rid of it, but we'll just say text, which is, a property, right? Is equal to total speed. All right, let's run it. Let's get our button where we can actually press it. Right. All right, so now we have show me speed. Oh no, what just happened, right? Why did we crash? Error signing property text with a value of integer. Like, what the heck does that mean, right? So when we use variables, there's different types. Like, imagine asking someone for their name and they were like 42. This doesn't seem right, right? Like, it technically could be that, but like, it's like a numeric value where text should be. And there is text numbers, right? But like, obviously we're doing calculations with that number earlier, so it's still a number. And you might not think too much of it, but the computer thinks of it very highly. Like, it's the difference between it working and not, obviously here. But to fix this particular issue, what we're going to do is cast it to a string. We're just going to be like, hey, before you put it into this label, it's going to be a number. And I want you to take it and then put it into a string, which is text. Oh, just real quick too, I don't want you to do this because that will work and it'll fix the issue. But what that does is that's a literal string, right? It'll literally take what you put in there, no variables, and then cast it to that spot. All right, so what I'm going to do now is cast it to a string. So str and wrap it up here and then put braces around it. And what this is going to do is send it over to another function that we don't really know where it is right now. It's built into this game engine, it's built into Godot, and it's going to send it out and then bring back what it interprets to be a string. So what happens when we do this now, right? 1, speed it up, and 6 as it takes off. So like, it was a number, but we're going to change it as it gets in. And this is really important because we can actually have just about anything inside of a variable. We can have other entire components inside of another variable. And let me show you how to do that. So let's just add another label here, right? All right, actually, I don't want to get the text to be big again, so I'm going to grab this one, put it down here. There we go. Label 2. All right, get rid of the script on it. All right. So how do I get that in there? Well, if you're going to go and put another node, is what I call it in Godot, inside of a variable, you have to do it a particular way. You have to basically say, when it's ready to come over, we'll put it in the variable. So we'll do this at onReady var, right? Like when that variable's ready, we're gonna call it just label 2, sure. And we can just grab it, bring it over, and it'll auto path it, right? It'll just give us this little $ pathing to it. And we'll just say we want label 2 dot text to equal it's working. And this will just show us that this label on the bottom here, we cast it to a variable, and that's how we're going to reference it. And then when we hit this button, it'll do all of the entire block that we had earlier, which changes that to its speed and also shows us that it's working, right? And if you got rid of this reference right here, and also if you want to make comments inside of your code, if you use the hashtag symbol, it'll basically gray out that line. You'll see a lot of them like built into the game engine here. And it just won't register. It's basically like it doesn't exist. And this is helpful for like, I don't know why you would do this, but this is where I do button 2 stuff. But it's pretty obvious right here, but you're going to want to do stuff like that in the future. Code can be pretty complex later on. So anyway, I commented out label 2. It's no longer a variable. And then right here, we don't have an identifier. Like it has no way of knowing what label 2 is without that. And it just, to be honest, won't even run. It will just crash. So you could put entire nodes inside variables. You can put strings in variables. You can put numbers in them. So I want you to remember numbers, text, nodes, and booleans. And booleans are basically true or false. So var is moving equals false. And obviously that's not going to carry over anything right now because we haven't done any kind of math on this. Like it's not just going to know if it's moving or not. We have to tell it that. But just know that, we can set it true or false, right? And, just so you know, like it's different than the numbers, the strings. Like this isn't a string true, right? It just knows whether it's true or false. So anyway, next time we're going to be going into conditionals, and we'll actually kind of like start learning a little bit of programming logic now that we got our variables intact. So I'm excited for that, and I will see you then.